Have you ever wondered why someone you loved, trusted, or depended on suddenly walked away from your life? Maybe they left without warning, maybe they betrayed you, or maybe the relationship simply faded. In those moments, it feels confusing, painful, even unfair. But what if I told you that every separation is not rejection, it is redirection? When God begins to remove certain people from your life, the first reaction of the human heart is often confusion and pain. We ask ourselves what went wrong, what we did to deserve abandonment, or why someone who was once close has suddenly become distant. Yet the truth is, not every departure is a tragedy. Many times it is divine strategy. Separation is not always a loss, it is protection. God sees what you cannot see. He hears conversations you never heard, and He knows the intentions that were hidden behind smiling faces. What feels like rejection is very often His redirection. His way of shielding you from dangers that would have destroyed your peace, your purpose, and your destiny. Think of how many times in life we cling to people because of history, comfort, or fear of being alone. We believe they are essential to our happiness, but God in His mercy knows that their presence will cost us more in the long run than their absence. Their influence may be pulling you away from your values. Their advice may be steering you off course. Their spirit may be draining you of energy, joy, and focus. And while you may not yet recognize it, God does. Like a parent pulling a child out of a busy street, He removes you not to punish, but to protect. Protection does not always come in the form of visible miracles. Sometimes it comes through unanswered calls, closed doors, or broken relationships. What looks like silence from heaven is often a shield you cannot see. Maybe the person who left was about to betray your trust in ways you couldn't recover from. Maybe their presence would have kept you small when God designed you to grow. Maybe they were blocking the right connections, the right opportunities, or the right kind of love from entering your life. Their absence, as painful as it feels now, is God's way of clearing the ground so better fruit can grow. It is natural to grieve when someone leaves, but you must not let grief blind you to the grace hidden in the separation. Just as a gardener prunes a tree, cutting off branches that are diseased or unfruitful, so God prunes relationships. The cutting hurts, but the result is life, health, and greater fruitfulness. What you think you lost was never meant to stay, and what was meant to stay will never be taken from you. Trust that every separation has a reason. People who walk away do so because their part in your story has ended. They may have been a lesson, a stepping stone, or even a mirror that revealed something about yourself. But if God allows them to leave, it is because their role is complete. Holding on tighter will only prolong the pain. Releasing them with faith allows you to step into the protection of God's greater plan. Look back at your life and notice the patterns. How many times did you cry over someone leaving only to realize later that their absence was the best thing that could have happened? How many times did you feel abandoned only to discover that you had been spared from heartbreak, betrayal, or disaster? You survived then and you will survive now. If God removed them, it is because He knew what you did not. So the next time someone exits your life unexpectedly, instead of asking, "Why me?" try asking, "What are you protecting me from, Lord?" This shift in perspective turns pain into peace. It reminds you that you are not at the mercy of people's decisions. You are in the care of a sovereign God. He loves you too much to let the wrong voices, the wrong influences, or the wrong relationships linger longer than they should. Separation is never easy, but remember, divine protection is often disguised as human rejection. Do not chase what God has cut off. Do not mourn what He has removed. Stand still, trust His hand, and know that the people who remain are the ones ordained to walk with you into your destiny. Every closed door is a shield, every goodbye is a guardrail, and every removal is God whispering, "I have something better. Trust me." Life is built in seasons, and each season carries its own lessons, blessings, and people. One of the hardest truths to accept is that not everyone who walks into your life is meant to stay forever. Some are placed in your path only for a season to serve a specific purpose in your journey, and then they must leave when their assignment is complete. Yet we struggle with this truth because our hearts want permanence in a world that was designed to change. We want people to remain constant, but God, in His wisdom, allows them to enter and exit according to the role they are meant to play in shaping who we are becoming. When a person enters your life, it is often for a divine assignment. They may come to encourage you during a time of weakness, to challenge you when you have become too comfortable, or to teach you lessons that could not be learned in isolation. Some bring joy and laughter to remind you that life can still be beautiful, while others bring conflict that forces you to grow in patience, forgiveness, and resilience. Their role is not always easy, but it is always purposeful. When their season is finished, they leave, and that departure should not be mistaken for abandonment. It is simply transition. Think of the seasons of nature. Spring is for planting, summer is for growing, autumn is for harvesting, and winter is for resting. You do not expect summer to stay forever, and you cannot cling to spring when autumn arrives. In the same way, people arrive in your life as part of a season. To hold on to them past their time is to resist the natural rhythm God designed. Their presence had meaning, but their absence also has purpose. If you force them to stay, you risk keeping yourself in a season that God has already moved you out of. The beauty of understanding seasons and assignments is that it frees you from bitterness when people leave. Instead of asking, why did they go? You begin to ask, what did their season teach me? Some people were only ever meant to help you for a while, not forever. A teacher's role is not to stay in your life once the lesson is learned. A guide's role is not to walk with you when the destination is reached. A helper's role is not to carry you once you have learned to walk on your own. Their assignment was temporary, but their impact can be eternal. This truth also protects you from disappointment. If you expect temporary people to act like permanent ones, you will be crushed when they walk away. But when you recognize that some are only seasonal, you are able to release them with gratitude instead of resentment. You thank God for what they gave, for what they taught, and for how they shaped you, and then you bless them as they leave. Your heart remains open to new seasons, new lessons, and new assignments. Sometimes the hardest part is when people you thought were permanent turn out to be seasonal. A friend you thought would last a lifetime suddenly grows distant. A mentor who guided you for years fades from the picture. A relationship that felt solid crumbles. In those moments you may feel betrayed or abandoned. But in truth, their assignment was simply complete. They were not meant to walk every chapter with you, only the ones they were assigned to. And that's okay. Their leaving makes room for those who are destined to accompany you in the next chapter of your life. God uses people as vessels, but He alone is your constant. The one who writes your story knows which characters are needed in which chapters. Trust that He knows how long each person's role should last. Some will be there from the first page to the last, but many will only appear in certain scenes. Their entrance is purposeful, and so is their exit. So release the fear of losing people and embrace the wisdom of seasons. Appreciate those who come, honor what they contribute, and let them go when their assignment is done. Do not chain temporary people to permanent positions in your heart. Instead, trust that God is orchestrating every connection and every separation. With this perspective, you will find peace in the comings and goings of life. You will stop grieving endings and start embracing beginnings. You will understand that some people were never meant to stay forever, but the season they walked with you was exactly what you needed to step into the fullness of your destiny. Growth is impossible without space. Just as a seed cannot grow into a tree if it is trapped in a crowded pot, your life cannot expand if it is filled with people who are not meant to be there. Holding on to the wrong relationships, whether out of fear, habit, or loneliness, blocks the flow of blessings God wants to send. Sometimes the very reason you are not meeting the right people, walking into the right opportunities, or experiencing the right growth is because you are still clinging to what should have been released. Letting go is not just about loss, it is about making room for better. When you keep people in your life who drain your energy, diminish your value, or discourage your purpose, you shrink without even realizing it. You spend so much time managing their negativity, their demands, or their inconsistency that you have no room left for those who could truly inspire, uplift, and push you forward. Growth requires alignment, and alignment requires space. God cannot bring the right voices, the right influences, and the right partners into your life if those places are already occupied by the wrong ones. This is why pruning is necessary. A gardener cuts away branches, not because he hates the tree, but because he knows those branches are stunting growth. Dead weight steals life from healthy growth. In the same way, God sometimes allows or even orchestrates the removal of people from your life who are not meant for your future. Their season has ended, their assignment is complete, and keeping them too long would choke the very fruit God desires to bring out of you. It hurts to release them, but it is essential. Without space, growth suffocates. With space, growth flourishes. Think of how often you have prayed for new opportunities, better relationships, or greater peace, yet nothing seemed to change. Perhaps the reason is not that God has not answered, but that you have not released. He cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. He cannot send divine connections into a life still cluttered with toxic ones. Sometimes the delay in receiving better is directly tied to your refusal to let go of worse. You are asking for an upgrade, but holding on to what is outdated. To step into the new, you must make room by releasing the old. Letting go does not mean hating or despising those who once walked with you. It means blessing them, learning from them, and acknowledging that their role in your story is finished. It means trusting God enough to believe that if someone is removed, their absence will make way for someone better aligned with His plan. Many times, the wrong people leave so the right people can enter. But if you keep chasing after those who walked away, you may miss the ones God has sent. Growth also requires the courage to be alone for a season. Empty space can feel frightening, but it is better than a crowded heart filled with the wrong voices. Do not fear solitude, because solitude is where God shapes you, strengthens you, and prepares you for the right connections. Embrace that temporary emptiness as preparation for fullness. The vacancy in your life is not abandonment, it is expectation. It is God setting the table for new guests, new relationships, and new blessings that match your destiny. Look at your life honestly. Are there people you are holding on to even though they no longer support your purpose? Are you tolerating relationships that drain you because you fear what life would look like without them? Remember, growth requires space. If your hands are full of what is not meant for you, they cannot receive what is. Release with trust, not with bitterness. Make space with faith, not with fear. And watch how God fills that space with exactly who and what you need for your next level. In the end, every letting go is really a letting in. Every empty place is an invitation for God to fill. The wrong people exiting your life is not the end of your story. It is the clearing of the stage for the right people to walk on. Growth demands space, and space demands release. Do not fight it, create room, and watch your life bloom in ways you never imagined. Many times we pray with tears in our eyes and heaviness in our hearts, asking God for peace, for clarity, for healing, and for direction. We ask Him to guide our steps, to remove confusion, to open the right doors, and to protect us from what is harmful. Yet when the answer comes, it often arrives in a way we did not expect. Instead of a new blessing appearing, a relationship disappears. Instead of a door swinging wide, one slams shut. Instead of someone staying close, they suddenly walk away. In that moment, it feels like loss, but in reality, it may be the very answer to the prayer you prayed. God sometimes answers not by adding, but by removing. Think back to times when you prayed for peace. You longed for calm, but the relationship you were clinging to brought nothing but storms. You asked for joy, but the people around you drained you with constant negativity. You asked for clarity, but confusion always followed certain voices in your life. Then suddenly that person left, or the connection broke, and you thought God had ignored your prayer. But in truth, He answered it in the most direct way possible. He removed the very source of the unrest, the very voice of confusion, the very presence that disturbed your peace. The same is true for healing. Many of us ask God to heal wounds in our hearts, yet we hold on tightly to the very people who keep reopening them. We pray for deliverance from cycles of pain, but we stay attached to the ones who perpetuate the cycle. God, in His mercy, knows that as long as those people remain in your circle, your wounds will never close. So He removes them. At first it feels like another cut, but over time you realize that without their presence, your healing can finally begin. What felt like a painful subtraction was actually the first step to restoration. Direction also often comes disguised as removal. You ask God to guide your steps, to take you into His will, and then suddenly opportunities close, friendships fade, and paths you thought were secure begin to crumble. It feels like everything is falling apart, but what if it is actually falling into place? God knows that you cannot step into your destiny if you are bound to people who are walking in the opposite direction. He knows that if you keep holding on to what is comfortable, you will miss what is purposeful. So He removes certain people, not to leave you lost, but to set your feet on the right path. Every goodbye becomes a signpost pointing you toward where you are meant to be. This is why perspective is everything. When someone leaves your life, you can either see it as abandonment or as answered prayer. If you trust that God hears you, then you must also trust that He answers, even if the answer looks like subtraction instead of addition. The truth is, God's answers rarely arrive in the form we imagine. We think He will bring peace by changing others, but often He brings peace by changing our circle. We think He will heal by fixing broken people, but often He heals by separating us from them. We think He will guide by opening more doors, but often He guides by closing the ones that lead to destruction. There are times you will look back and realize that the very thing you cried about was the very thing that gave you peace. The very person you begged to stay was the one blocking your healing. The very door you wished had opened would have led you into ruin. With time, you see clearly that God was answering all along. What you thought was loss was actually love. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What you thought was unanswered prayer was an answered prayer in disguise. So the next time someone exits your life and you are tempted to despair, pause and remember the prayers you prayed. Didn't you ask for peace? Didn't you cry out for healing? Didn't you seek direction? Maybe this is the answer. Trust that God knows the best way to respond even when it hurts, because His ways are higher, His wisdom is greater, and His love is deeper than anything we can comprehend. Removal is not abandonment, it is protection. It is not punishment, it is guidance. It is not the end, it is the beginning of a new chapter filled with the very peace, healing, and direction you ask for. Separation is one of the deepest pains the human heart can experience. When someone we once depended on, cared for, or dreamed with is no longer part of our journey, it feels like a piece of us has been torn away. The nights can be heavy, the questions overwhelming, and the silence deafening. Yet, hidden inside the H of separation is a mysterious truth. What hurts now may one day prove to be the very thing that carried you closer to your destiny. Pain is never wasted with God. He transforms it, repurposes it, and uses it to push you into the greater life He has already prepared for you. Trusting beyond pain begins with perspective. We see only the moment, the empty chair, the unanswered call, the friendship or relationship that ended. But God sees the full picture. He knows what dangers He shielded you from, what limitations He lifted off of you, and what growth He made possible by allowing certain people to leave. Pain screams that you've lost something essential, but faith whispers that you are being positioned for something better. When you trust beyond pain, you shift your focus from what was taken to what is coming. Think of Joseph in the Scriptures, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. To Joseph, those separations were heartbreaking. He was ripped away from family, friends, and familiarity. But each painful break was part of the path to his greater purpose, becoming a ruler who would save nations in famine. What looked like devastation was actually divine orchestration. Your own story may carry a similar pattern. The painful exits in your life are not random. They are carefully woven into God's plan to position you where you are meant to be. Trusting beyond pain also requires surrender. Pain makes us cling tightly to what we know, even when what we know is no longer good for us. We want to hold on, to fix, to convince, to force things back into place. But trust means opening our hands even through the tears and saying, God, I don't understand, but I believe you are in control. That surrender is not weakness, it is strength. It is the ability to believe that the author of your story knows how to write chapters you cannot yet imagine. There is also a refining power in pain. Separation strips away illusions and exposes what is real. It humbles the heart, teaches empathy, and strengthens resilience. Pain becomes a teacher that shapes your character and expands your capacity. Without it, we would remain immature, shallow, and unprepared for the weight of our calling. It is often in seasons of painful separation that we discover new strength inside ourselves, new clarity about our purpose, and new intimacy with God. The very thing you thought would break you becomes the tool that builds you. Yes, separation hurts, but pain is not the enemy. It is a bridge. On one side is where you were. On the other side is where you are meant to be. The only way across is to walk through the ache with faith. And as you walk, you discover that the pain lessens, hope rises, and purpose begins to shine through the cracks of your brokenness. What was once unbearable becomes the very evidence that you are being transformed and elevated. So do not despise the pain of separation. Do not let it convince you that you are forgotten or abandoned. Instead, let it remind you that you are being prepared. Every tear is watering the soil of your future. Every moment of loss is clearing space for greater gain. Every closed door is guiding you toward a better one. Pain may be the present chapter, but purpose is the ending God has already written. Trust beyond the pain. Believe that separation is not the conclusion of your story, but the necessary step toward your greater purpose. Hold on to the truth that what you have lost cannot compare to what is coming. And as you walk forward with faith, you will see that the pain that once seemed unbearable was actually the hand of God, gently but firmly moving you into the destiny He designed just for you. Life rarely unfolds the way we imagine it will. We make plans, we set timelines, and we build expectations, only to find ourselves facing unexpected turns, sudden endings, and painful removals. It is in these moments of confusion and heartbreak that we must remember a foundational truth: God's plan never fails. Every removal, every closed door, every goodbye is not outside of His control, but part of His perfect design to bring us into alignment with His will. What feels like chaos to us is carefully orchestrated by Him with wisdom beyond our understanding. When people walk away or are taken out of your life, the natural response is to question, why now? Why them? Why me? But faith teaches us to see beyond the pain of the moment. God is not surprised by who left or what ended. He knew long before you did, and He factored it into your destiny. Every removal is intentional, not accidental. It is not punishment. It is placement. He removes not to diminish you, but to position you. He clears out what will hinder so He can bring in what will help. Think of a master weaver at work. From the underside of the loom, the threads look tangled and messy with knots that make no sense. But when you turn the fabric over, a beautiful pattern is revealed. That is how God's plan works. From your limited view, the removals feel unfair, the losses feel meaningless, the timing feels wrong. But from God's perspective, every thread, every knot, and every cut is shaping a masterpiece. What you see as ruin, He sees as design. What you view as endings, He sees as alignment. Sometimes God's will require subtraction before it can bring addition. He knows which people will hinder your growth, which relationships will dilute your focus, and which environments will choke your calling. Out of love, He removes them, though you may grieve their absence. Over time, you will realize their presence would have delayed or destroyed your progress. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was actually protection. What seemed like failure was actually alignment with a greater purpose. God's plan also weaves timing into His removals. You may feel ready to hold on, but God knows the future and sees what you cannot. He knows the outcome of every relationship, the end of every path, and the consequence of every decision. So when He removes, it is always at the right moment, even if it feels too soon. You may not understand the timing, but you can trust the author who writes outside of time. He does not operate on your clock. He operates according to His eternal wisdom. The greatest peace comes when you stop resisting and start trusting. Trust means believing that even though you cannot see the full picture, God can. It means resting in the assurance that His plan cannot fail, no matter how uncertain life feels. Trusting God's plan does not eliminate the pain, but it anchors your soul in hope. You no longer see removals as random tragedies, but as sacred transitions. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start declaring, this must be working for me. Look back on your life and you will see the evidence. Times you thought you were broken beyond repair became the very seasons where God rebuilt you stronger. Doors you mourned for years gave way to doors you never imagined. People you lost paved the way for people who poured into you more deeply. Each removal was not the end of your story, but a turning point in it. And if He was faithful then, He will be faithful now. So let this truth settle in your spirit. God's plan never fails. Not one removal, not one loss, not one heartbreak is outside His design. Everything that leaves is part of what makes room for His will. Everything that ends is part of what ushers in His beginning. Every goodbye is leading you closer to the destiny He has already prepared. Trust the plan. Trust the author. Trust the God who never fails. Because when the dust settles and the tears dry, you will see that every removal was not a setback, it was a setup. And the path He chose for you, though painful at times, will prove to be perfect. Every removal in your life is not random. It is intentional. God does not take people out of your path to punish you, but to protect you. He separates to shield you from unseen dangers. He shifts relationships to prepare you for greater seasons. And He clears out what drains you so that He can bring in what will grow you. Some people were only meant for a season, not forever. Others were part of an assignment that has now been completed. And though the separation may hurt, it is never wasted. Painful goodbyes are often God's hidden answers to your prayers for peace, healing, and direction. What looks like rejection is actually redirection. What feels like loss is often preparation for gain. If you can learn to trust Him beyond the pain, you will see that His hand was in it all along. The friendships that faded, the opportunities that closed, the people who left, each one was part of a greater design. God's plan never fails. Every removal is alignment. Every ending is a beginning. Every loss is a setup for greater life, deeper peace, and higher purpose. So instead of mourning who left, thank God for what He is making room for. Instead of clinging to what is gone, open your heart to what is coming, because when God removes, He always replaces. And when He redirects, He always restores. Trust His plan even when it hurts, because in the end you will look back and realize that every removal was an act of love leading you closer to your destiny.